So welcome, everybody. I'm Christina Dolan. I'm the chair of the MIT Enterprise Forum, your host for the evening, and the founder of Dream It, Code It, Win It. We actually host our competition ceremony here at Cooper Union, so thanks again for hosting us once again. The MIT motto is Menet Manus, which stands for mind and hand, which is a very different motto from most other institutions. So it's quite fitting that the MIT Enterprise Forum would organize an event to call to action for a very vibrant tech community here in New York to rise to the occasion to solve the adult literacy problem. So today we have a very amazing group of people that are gathered together to help us understand the problem, and we have a group of panelists that have solved some amazing problems that are going to give us some tips and hints on what it is that we should be doing if you want to form a team and sign up and compete for this amazing competition. So our hope is that some of you will form teams and compete. We have the sync application in the back where you can find some teammates. And hopefully you will all compete for the $7 million Barbara Bush Foundation Adult Literacy XPrize presented by Dollar General Literacy Foundation. And I want to give a special thanks to our platinum sponsor, Fiverr, who is an amazing, amazing community. If you haven't used them, I suggest that you go to their website. There are a lot of resources that you could use to fill out a team, to build a solution and compete. So with that, let's get started. I would like to introduce you to Nicole Wallace, who will serve as our master of ceremony for this amazing event. Nicole is a New York Times bestselling author, a political analyst for MSNBC, and a former co-host of ABC's The View. Nicole has also served as communications chief for the White House. With that, let's welcome her on the stage.
So I come from political television, so I told these incredibly accomplished entrepreneurs, successful business people to fight and interrupt each other. So if you don't like it, it's my fault. It's an honor to be with all of you today. I have known Mrs. Barbara Bush for a long time because I worked for two of her sons, and it's a very small club that actually worked for two of her children, and I'm proud to be in it. She's very smart, and she's been a visionary and a champion for the cause of literacy for as long as I've worked for the family. One of her great partners is the CEO and president of the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, Liza McFadden. Liza is recognized around the world for her entrepreneurial efforts, and she is leading the foundation in its role as the nation's premier advocate for family literacy. She continues to aggressively expand the foundation's family literacy programs into several states and has led the efforts, along with XPrize, to launch this global competition on adult literacy. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Liza McFadden.
The Barbara Bush Foundation was started 26 years ago, and if you were to ask Barbara Bush why, her answer today would, I believe, be exactly the same as it was then. Literacy is the biggest equalizer we know. The Barbara Bush Foundation funds family literacy programs across the nation, programs where both children and their parents, people of all ages, have access, equal access to an education. This year, we've opened another 200+ programs. And as you can imagine, many of our program participants face serious economic challenges. The average family that enters our program, the mom or dad, reads at a less than a 5th grade reading level. On average, their income is $10,000 to $15,000. And they tell us that on average, they have less than 10 books in their home. But these families study hard, and they make us proud. Last year, these families improved their education levels, the parents, by 2 entire grade levels, and their children were ready to start kindergarten on par with their peers. So, we are very proud of what the foundation has done. Yet there are over 36 million adults in the United States who have low literacy skills, and less than 2% of them have access to literacy programs in this great nation. Believe it or not, if you are under the ages of 5 or over the age of 18, the education that you think is a civil right may not be a civil right. So, to put it into perspective, although we're proud of what we've done, if you know anything about Mrs. Bush, we cannot rest on our laurels. So, she is going to join us here this evening to talk about a bold new concept that we believe can help not just thousands, but perhaps millions of adults who have that need. So, please help me to welcome the former First Lady of the United States, Mrs. Barbara Bush.
For serving as the Master of Ceremonies tonight. I'm also incredibly grateful to Christina Dolan, and her team at MIT Enterprise Forum for hosting this event. Hello, everyone. Are you ready to win a grand prize of $3 million? Your team could be the next great innovators who could help transform our nation and the world through adult literacy. What we need is a recipe for big ideas, bold solutions, and team building. Just think of this event like speed dating. Hopefully you'll be able to find your perfect match and form a winning team. It is hard, Rosa, to believe that 36 million adults in the U.S. have low literacy skills. This means that they cannot read a prescription, label, or help their child with their homework. Clearly, a bold transformative solution to this great challenge. That's why the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy has partnered with XPrize in launching this exciting competition. We want to bring the brightest minds together and focus their creativity and expertise on the issue of adult literacy. Tonight is a wonderful opportunity for you to connect potential fans and to get valuable insight on team building and product development from our distinguished panel of EdTech experts. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for your willingness to join us in our efforts to brighten futures through literacy. And it sounds like my house is exploding. But it's not. Thanks, very much.
Almost witnesses to breaking international news. So I hope that woke you all up if you weren't already awake. Thank you very much, Mrs. Bush, who seems to have left us to attend to whatever's happening at her front door. I would like to introduce our next speaker, Anthony Tassi, who is the Executive Director of Literacy Partners, a 40-year-old organization committed to offering high-quality, community-based literacy programs in New York City. Anthony previously served as the founding executive director of the Mayor's Office on Adult Education. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Anthony Tassi.
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I was going to join by Skype tonight, but it turns out I was available, so here I am. I hope my house has not blown up while I've been out of the house. But my job here this evening is to connect some dots. Mrs. Bush spoke of some large numbers of Americans who are in need of literacy services, and my job is to put a few faces to those numbers and connect the dots also to what's happening here in New York City, because that's where we are here tonight at Cooper Union, and I think we have an amazing opportunity here in New York. So I'd like to begin my time with you by showing you a video that was produced by Saks Insights. So if you could cue that, we'll take a look at that.
reason why I came to Literacy Partners is because I didn't know how to read or spell. And all my friends knew how to read and spell. And I felt like kind of ashamed.
The thing that hurt me is that I couldn't help him with his homework, that I had to hire someone to help him with his homework.
I wanted to, improve my life. Basically, I have dreams. I still have dreams, and goals,
Not being able to read and write made me feel stupid and like being in the dark.
This program gave me an opportunity to learn. It gave me an opportunity to apply for college. This fall, I will be graduating with my bachelor's degree.
I can read my own mail. For a person that didn't know how to read and I couldn't even write a letter, I could write a letter to Ghana.
My son told me I am his hero. One of these days he'll be my grandchild. I can also read to them.
I'm able to teach my children some of the things that I know.
I believe in myself. I never believed that I could do anything. These days, nobody can tell me I can't, because I know I'm going to do it. I really believe that I can do it.
So that's just a quick view of some of the people that you'll be competing to serve if you enter this contest. And I was particularly struck by that phrase, not being able to read, ... It makes people feel all different ways. But I think we have an amazing opportunity before us to enter into a field that is currently not being well served by many people outside of the education community. It's being served very well by adult literacy practitioners around the country. Hopefully we have some here this evening as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about who the adult learners are and talk a little bit about New York City. So if we could have the next slide. In New York, our reality is both about language and also about literacy skills, the ability to read and write. And in New York, as many of you probably know, half of the population speaks a language other than English at home. A quarter of all New Yorkers don't speak English fluently. And about 45% of New York City adults read and write English at about the 8th grade level. Now, we have a big city, so let me put these percentages into numbers. There are about 2.2 million adults in New York City that are in need of adult literacy services. We currently serve about 4% of them in a full-time professional program. That's 1.6 million adults who don't speak English, and about 540,000 adults who speak English but have no high school degree. Now, the thing about high school degrees and the thing about all levels of educational attainment is your actual literacy skills will trail your last year of achievement by anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So if you know that somebody did graduate from high school but never went on to college, you can assume their literacy skills, their critical thinking skills, are about 3 to 5 years behind 12th grade. And sure enough, high school diplomas in New York State were pegged at the 9th grade functioning level for many years. So if somebody didn't graduate from high school, they dropped out in 10th grade, you can make an assumption that they're reading and writing on the 5th grade level, 6th grade level perhaps. And this poses some very interesting challenges for them, their families, and our city as a whole. And so now that I've given you these numbers for New York City, I want to show you a little bit about what it's like for somebody who can't read. Because for those of us who can read well, for all of you who are very well educated, it's really hard to put ourselves in the shoes of the adult learner, put ourselves in the world of somebody who is not enfranchised into this culture of literacy. All of you would have had a lot of success by your ability to manipulate the written word. The more and more complex you can do it, the more abstract you can do it, the higher end, the bigger your words, the longer your sentences, the more status you've gotten. Well, for this segment of our population, it's not like that at all. They're completely outside that reward system. For them, it's something completely different. So I'm going to put up a slide in a second with a passage of text that I'd like all of us to read together. So I'm going to put it up and just start reading out loud, okay? Go ahead and put the slide up. I can't hear you. Come on, speak up. Speak up. Okay, you're hopeless. Forget about it. Forget about it. Never mind. So this is a little bit of what it's like to read when you can't read real well. Did you notice the feeling you had? Like nobody jumped into it, right? There was that awkward silence there, and I made the little joke, right? That's what it's like when somebody who can't read well gets a text. It's that awkward silence. They don't want to jump into it. And then what happened when you started to read it? Did you feel real confident, like you were just knew what you... No, you actually were I hate to break it to you, but you were stumbling along, kind of like a very unsure of yourself, and you didn't know what you were reading. That's kind of what it was like. Until you cracked the code. And that's what reading is. It's cracking a code. None of us, reading is not an instinct. We don't develop it organically, naturally on our own. We have to work at it. There's a little code. And so once you crack the code, have people cracked the code yet? Yeah. So now go ahead and read it now out loud. Now you're doing great. That's fantastic. Great. I knew you could do it. Way to go. Excellent. So, but that's what it's like. It's cracking the code, and you've got to go word by word. You've got to figure out what Nepo means, what la means, what ert means. And by the time you get all the way down to Dicamad at the end, you've forgotten all about Nepo. So next slide. And so when adults come to a class, that's what we do as adult educators, is we work with them word by word. This student here of ours just came out of prison. And prison is a great place to find people with low literacy skills. It really is. I mean, if you're after this market, go to your neighborhood prison. You'll find lots of people who you'll be able to serve. Next slide, please. And for many of our students, we've got to go letter by letter. Some people have never held a pencil in their lives before. They've come from rural areas in Africa, as Fatume here on this slide has come from. Next slide. But what we know is that adults learn very differently from children, and they need to have an education environment that's very different from children. Children, and there are pluses and minuses to that. Children comparatively speaking, don't have a lot of information about the world. Adults have had a lifetime experience. Children, we have a big agenda for them to learn lots of facts and information and the who, what, when, where, why. There's a body of literature and cultural works we want them to know about to be good citizens. Adults need to get things done. You know, they have to put food on the table. They need to find, get, keep, advance in a job. They need to do lots of things, and they need those skills for very practical purposes. Children may have learning struggles. Many of them do. Adults who read with limited literacy had those same learning struggles, plus a lifetime of frustration and humiliation about not being able to read that they have to overcome. So to get people just to the starting line when you're working with adults, it's a much harder proposition than it is when you're working with children. Next slide, please. And in New York City, some of the adults that have limited literacy skills, they came from down south, like this woman here who was in our program a few years ago. They came from there. You think it's all in the past about what schools were like and what conditions were like, but it's not. The past lives today, and one of the legacies of the past is an incredibly inegalitarian education system where some people have a one-room schoolhouse that really doesn't teach them much of anything. And even in the big cities up north, we have high schools that graduate 13% of their student body. We had that for years in New York City. And did you ever wonder what happened to the other 87% that didn't graduate and are walking around the street with 3rd or 4th or 5th grade reading level? They're here. They're trying to make their way in New York City. They're raising families. They're working hard. They're paying taxes. And they didn't give it up willingly. That's one thing to know about adult learners that dropped out of school and had their education. I have yet to meet one that gave it up willingly. And given half a chance, they want to get back in the game. And the chance that we're currently giving people with literacy skills at this level is about 1 out of 20 of them we're going to give a chance. The other 19 we're not. We're going to put them on a waiting list, or we're going to wait till next year or the year after. So next slide. And we have people from all over the world in New York City at every level of society, and the same as in our classrooms. And next slide. We have bakers, and we have people who have accomplished all kinds of things in their home countries and in the communities here in New York City. And and if you want to meet a community of people with true resiliency and grit and perseverance, come to an adult literacy classroom. Work with this community. It's inspiration from the moment you walk in to the moment you leave. What people are up against and what they've figured out to do, the success and the livelihoods they've eked out for themselves while not being able to read at a high level, it's pretty impressive. Next slide. We also have a lot of young adults that have limited literacy skills. And one of the challenges and one of the really great opportunities, I think, because it's such a challenge, nobody else has done it as far as I know, is to really take on the issue of learning disabilities, because a lot of people, they had significant learning struggles, and I'm not an expert in this area about diagnosing this condition or that condition, but they had significant struggles that have been compounded year over year and really solidified, and now how do you bring them out of that? They have a desire, they have a will, they're going to do what they need to do, but how do you really bring them out? And how can you reach them when they're nowhere near a classroom? Geographically, they may be down the road, but they've got work, they've got this, they've got the other thing, they can't get into a class, there's a waiting list. People have significant learning disabilities that need to be overcome. And the last thing I want to leave you with is really from a wholly different perspective, is the multi-billion-dollar opportunity in adult literacy. And next slide. And that opportunity, in my estimation, really lies with parents. As some of you may know, in New York City, as in many other places around the country, we spend a lot of money on K through 12 education. In New York City, it's about $19,000 per student per year. And a good amount of that is trying to make up for deficits that children walk into the classrooms with. And the number, as it turns out, you read through all the research, it's a complicated issue. There's lots of factors, lots of challenges. But the number one predictive factor of children's early success in school is their parents' literacy level, their mother's literacy level in particular. So I wanted to leave you with a couple of pictures of the parents that I hope you will seize the moment and take the opportunity to develop solutions for and advance different kinds of opportunities. Next slide. These are some of the parents in our program. And when the amazing thing about working with parents is not only are you helping to solve today's problem today, you're also preventing tomorrow's problem. You're helping children overcome significant structural deficits, real significant literacy deprivation at home, and you're helping them to overcome that so they can get on track early enough so that they won't fall behind in school, and they'll have a chance at moving up the economic rung. And the amazing thing about working with parents, one of the things that makes it so gratifying is whatever parents can figure out for themselves, they figured out for their children too. They cycle it with the children right away. So if you can help parents increase their confidence, their children will be more confident. If you can increase a parent's vocabulary, the children will have a bigger vocabulary. If you can help parents restore a sense of hope in the future, connected to education, their children will have a sense of hope and for the future in education. And even though I can't see any of you anymore because of the spotlight, when I came out, I saw what I thought was a really beautiful crowd of people who, working together in teams, competing for the XPrize or just getting to know each other and figuring out something to do on the side. I think you guys are the right people here in the room to do something in New York City. I think you guys can make a great, big difference on a massive problem that hasn't been tackled yet. So thanks so much for being here. And I hope you can remember some of these images of the people that really do need your help. Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen.
love that. Okay, so now you have heard, and hopefully I've seen that video at the beginning twice. I saw it just now for the third time. It makes me cry all 3 times. If you're a mom and know what it's like to try to do homework, my kid's only 4 and it's really hard already. I don't know how you could not be inspired and moved by that, but we're going to change gears now that you have heard about the problem that XPrize and the Barbara Bush Foundation is working to solve. And now we're going to put some of the tough questions about how we get to the solution to the smartest group of people I've ever been seated next to in my entire career. Let me introduce you to all of our talented panelists. Stephanie Dua is my favorite because she loaned me her reading glasses. She is the founder and CEO of Homer. The Homer Learn to Read program is the fastest, most effective way to teach children to read. Stephanie previously served as the CEO of the Fund for Public Schools, working with Joel Klein and Caroline Kennedy. Thank you, Stephanie, for being here. You're all out of order, but I'm going to go to Paul. He's the CEO of Voxy. Wave, since you're not sitting in order for me. Paul is the CEO of Voxy, a venture-funded education technology company that he founded in 2010. Voxy's personalized English learning platform delivers unprecedented efficacy and is changing how second languages are taught around the world. Thank you for being here, Paul. Okay, you're all out of order, and I'm blind. I'm going to go back to the other side. Jonathan Harbour is the former CEO of Pearson K-12 Technology and the founder of SchoolNet. For over 20 years, Jonathan has been a pioneer in education technology, most recently served as CEO of Pearson K-12 Technology, responsible for Pearson K-12 Technology platforms after its acquisition of SchoolNet, Inc. in 2011. We're going to have lots of questions for you. And you were my lead instigator. Remember I told you I asked them to interrupt each other and debate one another? Michael Preston, coming back over to this side, is the Executive Director of CSNYC. He has developed, implemented, and studied technology and learning for more than 15 years. As the Executive Director of CSNYC, he oversees grant development to support programs that provide computer science to students in New York City public schools and helps lead Computer Science for All, a 10-year initiative to expand computer science to every city school. Previously, he worked at the New York City Department of Education and the Columbia Center for New Media Teaching and Learning. Thank you for being here. Okay, and last but certainly not least, Jake Schwartz, right here in the middle, wave, is co-founder and CEO of General Assembly, where he is responsible for guiding the organization's global growth and expansion. Under his leadership, General Assembly has scaled to 14 cities in less than 4 years and has helped more than 70,000 students create opportunities through educational programming in technology, business, and design, winning many awards. Now, soak up everything they say, but also think of your questions, because we're going to turn it over to you after we gab for a little bit up here amongst ourselves. Oh, Paul, did I do Paul? Yes, I did you at the beginning. See, you're in here twice. Okay, so you got that? Start thinking of your questions. We're going to open the floor to all of you after we talk amongst ourselves for a little bit, okay? Oh, am I on? Okay. I think we wanted to start letting all of you get into what your experience is and what you sort of bring to everyone here and to one another. So you want to start, Stephanie?
Sure. So, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Stephanie Dua. I'm the founder and CEO of Homer, which is a Learn to Read program. Prior to launching Homer, I was the CEO of the Fund for Public Schools. But really, I think the sort of heart and soul of what we're doing now is rooted in, I actually grew up in the one-room schoolhouse in a very rural town in Central California, and ended up finding my way down to Southern California, cobbling together a college degree through a number of community colleges, but eventually went to UCLA and studied physics, and then ended up on a totally different trajectory to Harvard and blue-chip firms, and landed at the Fund for Public Schools. And what always struck me after working with the mayor, Mayor Bloomberg, and Joel Klein, is we had made so much progress in New York City, but yet we just still didn't have a scalable solution. So I became quite obsessed and really took a data approach to, what if I could bring the discipline of the capital markets through venture capital to solving a really pressing problem in society. And third grade literacy seemed to me to be the thing that we ought to be able to solve for. We had a lot of data on what the problem was, and we knew a lot about it. So I started a company a couple of years ago to create scalable technology so that a child could essentially teach themselves to read, so that someone such as myself in a small town in rural California wouldn't have to rely on any particular expertise of a particular teacher or frankly a particular curriculum that happened to be purchased by a state agency, but that yet they could have an equal education to a top school anywhere in the world. And so that's why I created Homer.
Okay, and we're going to dig deeper on all of this, but Jonathan, go ahead and tell us what brought you here tonight.
The subway, I think, was the end. Well, I'm going to start with what I'm doing, and maybe then what I've done. So about 6 months ago, I co-founded EDGE, which is a EdTech incubator in New York City, which really was because I was getting tired of traveling around the country to meet with the people on the panel and who live a block away from me. But overall, when we take a look at all of the different challenges the world has, and so many of them that can be solved with education, there's a general belief, in my opinion, that education technology will be a huge component to solving those issues, and that we're going to need an army of EdTech entrepreneurs, and that New York is the natural global hub of the world for that to happen. We've got the largest school district, largest community college network, the large publishers. We've got the private equity funds, early childhood. 1 out of 4 New Yorkers, I believe, is a student. Yet no one thinks of New York as the EdTech capital of the world in the same way they might of the FinTech capital of the world. So that was part of the goal for initiating EDGE, and we've launched an accelerator program where we have a 3-month intensive boot camp. We've launched an incubator space so that they're all EdTech companies up on 37th Street living together, and we've launched National Education Week, which is going to be a kind of a seminal education technology conference with NYU, December 15th to 17th, not advertising on stage. I could stop there if you'd like.
Yeah, because we're going to come back on some specific questions, but I just wanted to give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. So, Jake, tell us a little bit about your recipe for success and your experience in this area.
Well, when we started General Assembly around 5 years ago, we really initially only had a small idea in mind, which was to build a community of some of our favorite entrepreneurs in New York, which we thought had the makings of being a really exciting startup ecosystem. As we got that community together, we saw this incredible demand for this little tiny experiment we were doing, which was running classes out of our space. And seeing that demand sort of reminded me of my own struggles, I would say, as a 20-something wandering in the real world after my fancy liberal arts education. And
don't tell me you're not still 20-something, though.
I'm not still
really?
20-something.
No? Oh, my God.
I wish.
You made me feel so bad about myself. Like you've accomplished all this. Okay. I feel better.
And really, feeling so ill-equipped, and it made me, start to think back and realize that there is, while liberal arts is really at the foundation of our educational system in higher ed, and we're all a product of it, it's a good thing. The reality is that those institutions do a terrible job at preparing students to be competitive in the workforce in the 21st century.
Right. The world as it actually is.
And so we're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on higher education. Attending college and graduating from college is considered the pinnacle of attainment for our educational system. And yet, most people, right now about 50% of college graduates report working in jobs that don't require a 4-year degree. And so there's this massive mismatch between education and employment, and that's really what we designed General Assembly to try to solve. So We built very short, very focused, skills-based programs designed to sort of replace an expensive graduate school degree as a new tool and a new way for people to feel a little less lost and lonely in the world of work. And the concept has worked quite well. We now teach a number of different disciplines in cities all around the world. We enroll about 5,000 students a quarter right now. We at the end of next year, we'll have more alumni than Harvard Business School. And we think in the process, we've shown a new way that people can think about higher education.
That's amazing. Now, Michael, you give us an extra beat because you've been all over the news. So if you could talk about your background and also the news you've made recently.
Sure. We'll be talking, I guess, about a different kind of literacy tonight. But CSNYC, the foundation I lead, was started by tech investor Fred Wilson 2 years ago to address the lack of computer science in New York City public schools. And so we're teaching kids about computational literacy, the ability to instruct a machine to do something, to make a product with technology, not just to be a user of technology, but to be actively engaged in its construction. When we started there, you could say there were probably fewer than 5% of students actively receiving computer science education in the city schools.
Fewer than 5%?
That's the estimate. It's a very hard number to track, but it was really something that was available only in high schools, and only a lot of the elite schools would offer them. And so there was this huge opportunity and a challenge that we had to address. I think it's a challenge that's national. There's a clear dialogue right now happening all over the place. Federal government, cities, districts, and schools are trying to figure out how to do this. The essential problem is a human capital problem, needing more and more teachers to be trained, because there isn't really a pipeline of computer science teachers. So we need to invest in their learning. So there's an adult learning component, and then through activating a teacher, then we can reach many students throughout the public school system. What's great about the announcement of the Computer Science for All initiative in September is that it galvanizes a really broad-based community of educators, industry, philanthropy, higher education around a cause that I think we all need to be on board with. So that's very exciting.
Can I just put you on the spot,
Sure.
and you, my guinea pig here, but how did you galvanize support for that?
Well, there's an amount of interest in seeing this happen. I think there's certainly a socioeconomic component to it. We have a clear lack of diversity in the tech sector, both along gender and ethnic and socioeconomic lines. Clearly,
I hope you have a question.
Looking at this
whoever
stage,
just gave me a
And I think we can do better with the demographics of the New York City public schools and, frankly, the sheer volume of kids. We have 1.1 million students in the New York City public school system across more than 1,700 schools. So if we can make a difference here, we educate in New York City 1 out of every 50 students in a public school in this country. So if we can figure out a way to make this work, I think it'll be a very good model. Industry has a self-interest in that we have an enormous number of unfilled positions in our companies, both in the tech sector and in companies that are increasingly across the board becoming technology companies. CTO, the New York City CTO, Minerva Tentacle, likes to say the future of work is tech, and the future of tech is in the New York City public schools.
All right, I feel better about this whole problem already. And we're gonna drill down with all of you on more specifics. But I want to give you a chance to talk about your success and how you sort of matched funding with the vision. Just start with your background, but get into that a little bit first too, because that's where we're gonna go after we've met all of you.
Okay. So I started Voxy about 5 years ago to solve a problem that I was astounded no one had done a better job solving, which is teaching English to people as a second language. There's 2 billion people around the world that need English to get better jobs and move up socioeconomically, not too dissimilar from literacy. This was a problem that I thought technology was just woefully deployed. Like people were shipping DVDs in yellow boxes with static content, and this is like the era of the real-time web and Facebook and Twitter. I just thought that there clearly should be a better way. It's also a problem that was really personal to me, because when I was 22, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, which hopefully most of you that are 22 in this room don't know what you want to do with your life completely yet either. But I bought a plane ticket to Santiago, Chile, and I didn't speak a word of Spanish. And I learned firsthand how sort of difficult it is to learn a second language. So sort of fast forward 15 years, and I started Voxy to solve that problem. Before this, I was actually a venture.
Can I just ask you, is that because the ESL programs are insufficient, or they're inaccessible, or they're unavailable, or they don't work, or people don't know how to get to them because the language is a bit, because I think, tell me where the problem is. Is it all those things, or?
Yeah, the problem is sort of a combination of all of those. They're typically really expensive, really inefficient in terms of how they ask you to use your time. Like they might ask you to translate it back to your native language, which is...
Or the parents don't speak the language to even know to get the kid, or
yeah,
generational maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely sort of a number of factors that play into that. But the one thing that's not going to change is that English is the language of commerce. It's the language of the internet. Every day, 350,000 people are born around the world, and they're all going to speak a different language, most of them, besides English as their first language, and they'll all need English to succeed and to sort of move up. You asked about funding, and prior to this, I was actually a venture investor for Virgin Group, which is Richard Branson's investment arm that built Virgin Mobile, Virgin America, Virgin Galactic, Virgin Hotels. So I did start the company from a standing start with I raised $600,000 off of a PowerPoint presentation, which basically just said what I told you guys, that I think that Rosetta Stone was a really lousy alternative to a huge problem. And yeah, it was sort of took me a year to get a product to market, and then it's been, at this point, too many cycles of raising venture capital to, first of all, you get sort of the idea into a product, then you get product market fit, or you get a product that does meet a legitimate need in the market that people are willing to pay for, and then how do you scale it?
So since we're going to be talking about solving the problem that the people we saw on the screen have, can you talk about how you solved a problem that people you knew and that you had experienced yourself when you went to Chile? I mean, you are solving, you obviously have all the expertise in the business world, but you are solving a problem that people have, and we want to put together teams to solve a problem that those people have. Can you talk about solving their problems and how the product did that?
Yeah, and I'd say that it's, it takes many, many, many failures along the way until you actually, can say with some confidence that you solve someone's problem with the product that you've come to market with. I'm sure all of you guys can relate to that, but me personally, like I said, when I was 22, I was working in an automotive parts warehouse outside the sort of by the airport in Santiago, and I got made fun of all day long by these guys who thought that I was an idiot because I couldn't speak Spanish. Here,
so exactly what she was talking about.
Exactly what they were talking about.
Right.
And when I was, I was like, oh, I have, it's nice liberal arts degree similar to Jake's, and I'm like, I'm really not an idiot, but if you don't speak someone's language, you come off as an idiot. That's pretty much a fact. And so I could really relate to that problem and the thought process that they went through, but I really couldn't relate to someone learning English. So, and I think this is how you do build products that solve problems, is it's a lot of testing. It's a lot of listening and testing. Like, I didn't know anything about second language acquisition, and I actually didn't really know anything about technology, but I started a technology company that does second language acquisition. So you get the right people in the room, and you know what you don't know, and you just sort of have a general direction, and if you can get all the people in the room with enough money to pay them, and you iterate enough and test enough, you can sort of come up with a solution that works.
And then I guess I want to put this back to the group, and in the spirit of my background in political television, this is a jump ball. Whoever wants to answer it. I saw firsthand sort of the barrier of shame, that a woman came up to me when I worked at The View and had a very specific question about politics, and I said, let me give you my email address. And she started to cry, and I was like, oh God, she thinks I'm going to stalk her. I said, I won't email you unless you email me, and she said, I can't write, and I'm embarrassed to write to you. And I was sort of gobsmacked by her tears, but they were from shame. And can you draw a direct line between the problem we saw on the screen and education technology solution? And can you tell us how do you go about doing that? Where do you start?
I'm going to start by saying that I don't think technology is no doubt the answer, but I am willing to bet that there are already great technological solutions to this problem. And if not, they should be developed immediately, and Paul could probably show you the way, because he's already built a platform that does half of that. I would guess, and I would really venture to say that the real challenge is about putting the pipes together. And when I mean the pipes, it's about a couple different things. It's about distribution. It's about funding. It's about incentives for the students, incentives for the support structures around the students. And it's making all those pipes work together is the real nature of a solution here. And so I think, and this is partly like how I've approached General Assembly, and I think why we've had so much success, is that we actually took a very, we're not doing anything that original around how we're teaching the stuff. We're making it as convenient as possible while really keeping in mind that the real measure of success is how successful is the person on the other end. So I would highly recommend starting with the goal and working backwards. The goal is more people participating in these learning programs that we already know work in a way that's accessible and affordable and can get the right stakeholders involved. And so I think that if I look at the challenges of that, it's a lot about distribution. It's a lot about making the incentives work. And I think one of the gifts you have with adults is that they will want this solution, right? But it has to be presented and packaged and delivered in a way that can work with their lives. And that's where the art is going to come, and where the work and the innovation will actually take place.
Let me put that to you. I saw some, I don't know if you were thinking, or I don't know, I thought I could see you thinking from here. Can I put the same question to you? What can you connect the problem we saw on the screen with how a team gets to a solution and wins the prize ultimately, but solves the problem, I would guess would be the ultimate reward?
Sure. So what do I look like when I'm thinking?
A little bored,
Okay.
but
No, I was great.
But we were all right with that.
No, I was intrigued, and I will build upon Jake's response, even though I know you'd like me to disagree. But as I'm kind of thinking about this, I think a first question is whether.
See, I knew you were thinking. I know.
So I gave it away again. Is whether, if I'm sitting in the audience, I'm thinking about, am I building a product or am I building a company? And those are going to be two very different questions. And it probably needs to, if one wanted to answer that, one probably first needs to ask, is there a market? And if there's a market, then maybe I can build a company. If there's not, then I might still be able to build the solution, but need to find some other way to make it come to fruition. So quick math in my head, rules of thumb, if it's a company, meaning you actually want to get investors and say you're going to make a company that's going to be worth something and the private sector is going to fund it, people tend to like billion-dollar markets. So if there are 36 million illiterate or low-literate adults in the United States, that means you need to be able to charge about $30 per person to say that's $1 billion market. And then you can say, well, I could maybe get 10% or 20% of that market over a period of time.
Don't forget the rest of the world.
Well, but we're starting with, people, for better or worse, people tend to think of the U.S. first as a benchmark, and then if there's $1 billion here, then there's more elsewhere, unless you're starting somewhere else. So then one needs to say, and again, this is down the path of being a company, then one needs to say, well, is there a funding source?
And is there?
Well, I don't know. So, if I was thinking of doing this myself, there were some things mentioned, for better or worse, how many of these people are in prison? Is prison a funding source? There are companies that actually provide education to inmates and are compensated. We pay for that. Or are there other institutions? So either are these individuals who can afford it, and my guess, just from the demographic background, that's probably not the case. These are probably not people who are going to pay $30. So that means there has to be some other government source. I might look to IDEA legislation to the extent that might be some special ed money, because I heard that there's a large population that might have special ed issues. So I would look for pockets like that. Or I would say, this isn't the company, and then what kind of grants or foundations or other kind of funding sources might I look to for that? So that was more of a structural answer than what the product is, but that's where my mind was headed.
And Stephanie and Michael, you're both nodding, so Stephanie and then Michael on the same question.
Yeah, just a more succinct way of saying, no.
I disagree.
I said she was my favorite, right? And it's not just the glasses.
I do think having run a large nonprofit and now running a venture-backed for-profit, I think you have to have that orientation from the gate. I think doesn't mean you can't build a product and then start to think about the market, but I think it's going to be stronger if you understand where your source of capital is going to be, because there's value in both, by the way. There's value in building a product that can seek government funding or foundation funding, and there's equal value in the capital markets and, frankly, the discipline of the capital markets. Now, I think it's important to know in the foundation world that that cycle can be longer, so it can take longer to secure funding if you're a not-for-profit. So you think about the product development and how you scale in a different way than I think if you're seeking venture capital funding. What I'd also say is, from my own personal experience, it was easy to get wrapped up after we launched the first product in, what are the big exits? Where are you going to exit? Like, you start to get caught up in all of these conversations about what is your next exit? What is your next source of funding? Who are you partnering with? It's just like, you just can easily get wrapped up in all the questions that actually are not material to what you do tomorrow. And so the one lesson, many lessons I've had in this process is it's far more important as a young company with a young product on market to really think about, in a laser-like focus, where am I getting my next dollar tomorrow? And where am I getting my next customer tomorrow? Because if you can prove growth out, if you can prove steady, measurable growth, week over week, month over month, it is sort of the 30-mile march, that is valuable in of itself, irrespective of where you go for capital and irrespective of whether you're in a not-for-profit or a for-profit venture.
Can I ask you just your unique experience of going from the public sector to the private, if you could get at this question of pockets of money, specifically to the adult literacy question?
Yeah, so I think, just to echo what Jonathan said, and by the way, he's been a wise counsel for me all along, so whatever I'm saying, I really kind of borrowed here. But I actually think if you've got a more niche product or a smaller segment of the population or the problem you're trying to solve for, I think there's a lot of interest in the foundation world around literacy. I think if you've got sort of a bigger global vision for adult literacy, then, I don't know, because I've not looked into it, but I'm sure that, Paul would know probably better than anyone, that there is a real interest globally in literacy, and in particular smartphones. When I was in Rio, I was, amazed in the favelas, what you're seeing. And so I think that there's a real opportunity globally that could bring back to what you're seeing in the United States in particular, because one of the largest sources of illiteracy or low literacy rates is with non-native English speakers in the United States.
Michael, can you take your experience and your success and the announcement of September and sort of imagine a literacy version of that kind of success? Can you imagine trying to apply what you did successfully in that effort to this problem?
Yeah, I think so far I feel like it's early for us to call anything success. It makes me nervous when we're just starting out on this journey with the city. Although there were a couple of things that I've been thinking about lately that I think are encouraging for people who are also thinking about starting something new. Earlier, Liza told me that the folks who won the XPrize for Oceans were a family from Montana, and last time I looked at a map, Montana was not near an ocean, and there's something but there was something unique
There's
about
some
what
Republicans running for president who might try to debate you on that question, but you are correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I would welcome that debate. But similar to what Jake said too, is that I think you don't have to invent something from scratch. That you can actually be creative and do your homework and do research and get to know the work and find some shoulders to stand on. And certainly in building a computer science initiative here in the city, we are tapping decades of experience in industry, more than a decade of funding from the National Science Foundation for computer science education. And so learning to put the right people in the room and think creatively and imagine who your target population is and what kind of outcomes you'd like to see in the near term to prove that what you're doing is on the right path. Always checking along the way, and don't assume that you've gotten it right and everybody can go home.
Paul, let me ask you, so you saw a deficiency and inefficiency in ESL. Obviously, the same exists in an even graver scale with literacy. Why do you think there isn't a you in the literacy space yet? Hopefully, you're in the room.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Hopefully, they're in this room. I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but it could be that many people have tried to learn a second language, and those people tend to have more of the profile that would bring them into to starting a business or to building a product. Yeah, does that make sense? If you're sort of self-selecting.
Not knowing a second language is a deficiency that suggests you have other abilities.
Yes.
Not being literate is a deficiency that suggests you can't even get to a possible.
It suggests that you'd be much more limited in the capabilities.
Why haven't governments stepped into this space, offering innovators like yourselves grants? I mean, why isn't the government more active in this space? Put it to you, Paul, and you, Stephanie. Why do you think?
Well, look, I think there is, and I think it's for a small company that's trying to move as fast as lightning, that just takes so long. And so for me, really looking at the government as a solution or a source of funding for me would have to mean that it could line up, and it didn't have to take too long and too much of my time in order to secure that funding. I think that's really what the threshold is. It's not that there isn't government money. I mean, we've talked to a number of government institutions. It's just when you have a small staff and a small team, you can't afford, frankly, to have 3 people writing a big government grant. So something would have to happen to make sure that wasn't taking a third of your resources, frankly, away from engineering or marketing or product.
Yeah, I think a big difference between ESL, which is generally taking like the emerging middle class around the world and those people who can sort of see that there's something better. But the big difference in that is they're spending $100 billion to learn English as a second language. I don't know that the illiterate population is already pulling money out of their pocket.
They probably don't have
enough, and therefore maybe it does lend itself to a public sector solution. When Jonathan was saying, and I completely agree, if you're starting a business, make sure you know where the budgets are. Like, you have to know whose dollars are going to end up in your hands paying your employees and building your product. And I can't think of where those budgets for literacy are in the private sector.
I agree. So actually, back to your question, and I don't know the exact rules of the competition, but lobbying may actually be one of the most important pieces of this solution at scale, because you tend to have targeted funding, and then you have a lot of innovators, and so that is something to think about in terms of leverage and scale. Back in terms of actual solutions, and I'm also the founding chairman of a charter school in Brooklyn called the Launch Expeditionary Learning Charter School, and we start in 6th grade. 5% of our incoming students are proficient. Most of them are at 2nd and 3rd grade reading, and we use it a lot of solutions. When I first heard about this, I said, "Oh, we need Read 180 for adults," which is, a category of how do you bring kids who are 2 to 3 years behind, or there are things called Wilson Reader or System 44, which if you don't even know phonetics by the time you're in middle school. So I assume a lot of those same technologies would turn into leveling. So a big issue of embarrassment is, how do you take middle school kids that are reading at 2nd grade and give them text, which is relevant to them but is at a 2nd grade. So I'm sure so the solutions are probably not completely novel, I do think how do you tap into making a sustainable ecosystem that can continue to drive this is probably going to be the innovation that actually solves this problem.
What should a team do to pursue funding? What advice would you give a team to pursue startup funding?
I think you should start, before you start pursuing funding, you should probably say, okay, let's look at the problem. Let's look at, after looking at other solutions, I mean, this is not something that has never been solved at even a small scale before. There are adult literacy programs all over the world. There are probably successful ones here. I would first identify and start to research, start to think about what my solution might be, why it's novel, why it could scale. And then I would start to look at how much it's going to cost. And I would look at what are the other, like we're saying, look at the revenue sources. And then after you've put together a plan and you know whether or not this is going to be the most profitable ed tech venture in the world, or probably something that's better as a nonprofit that's funded by foundations, at that point is the right time to go out and pursue funding. And those stories that you have told with your plan can now then be gut checked by going and talking to people and networking and using forums like this and people who are much, in support of the XPrize and things like that to start to look for support. The reality is that starting a nonprofit, starting a venture, it's the same thing. You're trying to build an organization from scratch, and it takes a Promethean effort of will in order to roll that thing. You have to roll a boulder up the hill. And to do that requires not just you, it requires people around you who believe in your idea, who give you feedback that you can listen to. It requires you to recruit team members and people who believe in your idea, your vision, but also believe in being part of that vision. And then it requires marshaling resources that you currently don't have in order to make that happen. But you can't just jump in and do it. You kind of have to go through that process. And frankly, I think I see a lot of entrepreneurs of all different stripes who try to jump into going to get funding as if that's the answer. Funding is never the answer. Funding is a validation that you've already done a lot of work.
It's like writers that want to sell a script before they've written the first chapter
Correct.
of the book.
And so you have to really, the first thing is to go get a bunch of feedback from a bunch of people who know more than you, feel wrong and stupid and embarrassed like 100 million times, take as much of that feedback as you can, but not every piece of feedback, because then you're not guiding it, right? And shaping it into something that feels a little more bulletproof and where you know what you need to do to accomplish that vision.
Yeah, people think venture funding is like you said, success or even like really high quality money. Venture capital is the most expensive money in the world. In the beginning, it's like an extortionary loan, and then it turns out to be very, very expensive for the entire life of your company. One of my early angel investors will never let me forget that he and his brother built a bigger business using National Science Foundation grants. And they owned 100% of it, and they got something like $15 million worth of grants. And you can build billion-dollar businesses off of $3 million. There's a company in New York that did it off of 5. So there's lots of other ways to get money that are better than.
It sounds like you're all saying it's maybe a shiny object over here, but not.
Absolutely.
You were nodding. Can I get you to answer the same question?
Well, I think don't make it up yourself is key. Not necessarily about the funding, but that using the research base and going and finding the people who actually know something if you don't have all the answers, which I doubt anybody does. Singapore Math, which is a very popular mathematics curriculum that's being adopted now with the arrival of the Common Core, was developed by the Singaporean government in the 90s, but it's based on Jerome Bruner's, an American psychologist, research that we Americans seem to have neglected to follow in building math that actually would be understandable and provide a good foundation. So similarly, I think, go and find the research that gets left behind, or really acquaint yourself with the domain. Go meet some learning scientists and get to know them. Embrace the nerds. How many people here think about phoneme awareness on a regular basis? All right, so more of you need to go and think about that if you're going to be entering this competition.
Jonathan, it sounds like you do a good deal of mentoring. If you were mentoring the future winner of this competition or the competitors, what advice would you give them here at this early phase?
Boy. Well, I've been sitting here actually trying to think about if I wanted to do this, what I would do. So, and just from the data that I've heard so far, and not having a lot of data and coming to conclusions before one should, I probably would recommend looking at this not as a for-profit venture, certainly to begin with, and I would look for some kind of funding source, let's call it a foundation, I think, to begin with, or an individual who really cares about this. I personally would probably then go to somebody who's already built the solution for a different population. I would guess that and as I was mentioning those companies, I would guess that if one went to Scholastic, which is now HMH, and said, hey, we'd like to license Read 180, but for adults, and how much would it cost for you to make level readers for 40-year-olds instead of 10-year-olds? So this may be more specific than mentoring, but that's the way I would tend to think of this problem. I guess if I would abstract from that, it goes back to decide whether there's a market, which is private sector, whether it's a product, public sector in terms of how you go. But that would be my quick take as to how to approach it.
And you, Stephanie, what would your advice be?
Yeah, no, it's just, I think another area that we've not talked about, which is unique perhaps to adult literacy, is corporate foundations. And I think that there's a really interesting, nice feedback loop between companies that have a target market either in their workforce or in their consumer base that may be struggling, and end users of this product, and involving them, like Dollar General's here and others, involving them as real partners in the solution, because I think that this is something that would benefit many, many companies as well as the end user. And so that might be unique to adult literacy, frankly, and even better than thinking about a government source, or even better than thinking about a venture capital source.
Could be a monetization opportunity too. I would guess that, I would guess there's a lot of companies that employ millions of people that fall into this population. And
like a hotel chain.
Or a retailer or any service company in the yeah. And I would bet that it is a massive cost to them to have a workforce that is sort of sub-literate in terms of their standards. And I bet you could create a very compelling argument that by investing in that they would enhance their own, whether it's worker performance levels, productivity, turnover.
Their ability to hire from within.
Correct.
Probably.
I mean, there's all sorts of benefits. And I would bet that there's an opportunity there. Mm-hmm. Now that we're talking, this is fun. We're like talking.
Okay, good. So we're brainstorming. So if I switch around and then say if I wanted to make it a for-profit venture, so I think that's a great one. Either go after corporations who have large unskilled workforces. Second, there's a great company called the American Prison Data Systems, New York education technology startup. Again, they essentially teach. Give high school diplomas and more to inmates. They didn't need to reinvent the wheel. They took things which already exist and found a new market. So I would talk to them and to those customer base. And then I think you also mentioned about getting parents of kids in school. So there probably is a market as well in public schools that's available. So I would, before making the decision, those are probably three sources of potential revenue that I would explore. And if one can get to those kind of numbers, then maybe you can make a case for private capital.
I also have to believe there is government funding for adult literacy programs out there in the world. They're probably not scalable. They're probably all in person. They're probably very resource intensive. But if you could find, like, that's what I'm curious about, because if you can find that, there's no doubt that a technological solution will be cheaper and more scalable, and you might be able to command some of those resources for your project, at least for a pilot to start.
Paul?
I was just thinking about another potential source of capital, which is someone said that low literacy is a huge driver of cost in the healthcare industry. I'm sure some of the big healthcare payers would potentially fund to have more of the people literate, so they're taking their prescription drugs.
So here's what we've just done here is find all the other stakeholders that do have a lot of money who might have a stake in fixing this problem. And what we've all done as entrepreneurs here is thought through, okay, how could you convince them to play with you, right? How can you convince them to support you in some way? It's funny, I just watched us go do it like one in a line. It's pretty funny. And I think it's a way of saying there's a large societal problem. Who is this a problem for? And who that it's a problem for has the means to pay for it? And government is certainly one, but there are others too. And I think as entrepreneurs, we all prefer to not try to sell to the government.
Michael, are you the only one I didn't get on this question? What advice would you give to a team if you were their mentor?
But maybe just to add something different to what has been already said, get to know some adults who have learned to read as adults. I think the problem, nothing will be more revealing to you than actually understanding the process. Talk to Anthony, understand what they do, and see what people tell you, what the pain points are, and what the opportunities are to really address something on the ground.
I have two more questions to put to all of you. One from our sponsors here, and one that I just haven't been able to get out of my head since I read about what all of you do and watched that video the first time yesterday. So everything I do in my life is on my phone. Like, I would save my phone before my dog. Not really, I'd get the dog, but I'd be really bummed about the phone. But everything requires, everything from ordering my son's, everything I need for a toddler. I'm out and about and the car seat doesn't fit and I'm at a light and I'm literally ordering a booster seat and I Google it. How do you function in this world without being able to read? And as leaders in all of your industries, isn't there a societal urgency to making sure that everyone can do what I was in the green room. I saw every one of you touch your phone. If you can't read, how do you function in today's technology-driven world? And how do we not all have a stake in wanting to fix it? Why is this hard? Why would it be hard to get people to pay to fix this problem? Stephanie, you first.
I'm just reminded that it's not just a problem that we should be aware of, but the cost of the individual is not just the ability to be able to read, but it's, a series of benefits that may be available to them, whether they're healthcare benefits or tax benefits or free lunch benefits or whatever it might be that they can't access.
For a working mom. If she can't read, she can't go onto her, and phones have actually done a good job of making those companies have made themselves available.
And the second problem is, many companies have usury practices around individuals who have low literacy rates, right? So there's famous tax companies that have, 600% interest rates on early loans that you can get. So not only are you not getting certain benefits, but you're not able to protect yourself from people who perhaps have usury practices. So it's an education problem. Obviously, it's perhaps that, and this comes back to the corporate foundation, the people who are feeling the pain need to be part of the solution.
They're sort of in the shadow of society, and they, and back to where Liza McFadden started tonight, this is a civil right, that seems ignored. It seems like in this era of social responsibility, this isn't just a problem that should be funded. This is a problem that should be shared. The solution should be shared. I want to give you all a chance to speak to this, though. Jonathan.
Well, I think that's a question that you need to determine how honest you want to be with the answer.
Very.
We live in a political system. Government tends to fund things that voters care about. Based on the linkage between income and literacy of this group, it's probably not a highly well-represented constituent thing. That's what tends to get government to move. So we could go through what you could do to try to change that. You kind of need a spokesperson, and you need the right person, and you got to figure out whether it's local government or national government. And that's why I went back to lobbying. You need both a spokesperson from the outside as well as, key champions in the inside. And that's how money moves from government to solve problems.
I think this is about the history of the world is about very obvious problems in hindsight that don't get solved in the immediate because those groups are somehow marginalized or not valued inside the existing system that could fix it. And to me, there's so many little problems like that. This is a pretty big one. But it is about a combination of things. It's putting a spotlight on the costs, not just for the individuals who suffer from it, but from the entire society level. It's about putting those pipes together, the people who should care about this who don't, the people who should be paying for this but don't, right? The solutions that already exist but don't get put into action, and that is what entrepreneurship is, in my opinion. Regardless of what kind of organization you want to build, that's what it's about. Every year, solutions get created for things that seem obvious in retrospect. And there is no doubt this is a massive problem that somebody will fix, and then we'll say, can you believe it took till 2016 to fix it? That's outrageous. But that is the nature of the world. And I think people do care about it. This XPrize is evidence that somebody cares about it. A lot of people, right? And and my guess is that she's not the only one, right? And that it's really about bringing together these previously fragmented and disparate individuals and organizations that do care about this into something that can make a real splash.
Michael?
I think it is probably a lot about revenue sources, which is something this panel has wrestled with a little bit tonight. And as Liza mentioned earlier, after 18, the government does not, invest as much in the course of your life. Another thing that struck me, though, when watching the video earlier was that all of the interviewees were women, and
we said that over here.
It was striking. And it made me think of how women are also the targets of microfinance loans in Africa and other places, because they are the ones who directly confront and address the challenges to their livelihood. And similarly, I think there's a tremendous stigma to being illiterate, and but if the pain or the difficulty of being illiterate is so great, then you're just going to put yourself out there, and perhaps that's an explanation. So finding ways that can help alleviate the stigma and make it easy, given the constraints that most of these people are living under, working probably multiple jobs and balancing a lot of different challenges, then that seems to be a really good goal.
Paul?
I don't know that I have much more to add than this very erudite group, but I will say that I think it needs a champion, and it needs, like Barbara Bush is amazing, but problems like this that are externalities, really, this is like an external benefit or a cost that's not going to get solved by the system, it needs like a champion. It needs like I don't know, Mother Teresa or someone to...
You're in this room, I can feel it.
You're in this room, and you're passionate about this problem, and you're going to go get a lot of people passionate about it with you, because that's another thing that entrepreneurs do, right? We just get people fired up about the idea that gets us excited.
And that's the perfect transition to the next part of this. I'm going to tee it off with the first question, and then we're going to open it up to all of you guys to ask questions. I think the rules for that are to come up to the microphone. So I don't know if you want to get online behind the microphone. I'm going to ask the first one. So some of the teams think that they won't win the $7 million grand prize. How can we feel encouraged to continue to pursue this endeavor and seek different options outside of the XPrize? So I guess, someone thinks it's far-fetched, it's far, I think I can guess just from being up here that you guys were never deterred by the odds. But what advice would you give someone who thinks it's far-fetched to win? Jake, you want to take that?
I think, look, it's very clear this is a large problem. It is a large problem with serious societal costs. I think solving this problem is not about $7 million, and I actually think there is a big business here, or at least a very big organization.
Okay, so you guys just met your competition. These guys.
No, I've already got a day job, but
busy.
And this sounds
Just
hard. This is gonna be. This is a challenge that. Look, this is what I think people are all craving this kind of life pursuit. I can't think of a pursuit that would be somehow more worthy to spend time on than something like this. This is not about the prize. It is about solving a massive problem and changing millions of people's lives. I think that should be incentive enough.
Anyone want to add anything to that pretty perfect answer? No? All right, take it away, audience.
Hi.
You want to just give us your name too, and then if you
Patrick Morris Suzuki. So actually registered already. I'm actually running a one-person team. So the question that I have is that I'm going to fairly soon need access to people to interview, to run designs by, to start doing field tests. So what is the easiest way for me to get access to, apparently 25% of New Yorkers are in one way or another, adult New Yorkers are in one way or another lacking. But how do I actually get access to a pool of them effectively?
So that's the distribution problem. Yeah, go.
For research and testing.
Oh yeah, so he's asking why, how do you actually, to test out your solution, you need a sample pool.
Yeah.
Where, New York has supposedly got all these people, where do I go find
So I think I have a really apropos answer to that. And when I started building Voxy, which is English learning for second language, I started Googling around and I found the most densely populated Hispanic neighborhood, Sunset Park in Brooklyn. And every Saturday and Sunday for a month, I went to Sunset Park and I came up to all these Hispanic immigrants and I said, I'll give you $20 if you talk to me for 20 minutes. And I have 2 hours of really amazing video, which I think is how I raised my second round of funding.
Another good source is public libraries. Fantastic source is public libraries. So when I did a lot of work at the fund and we wanted to reach out to parents who are non-English speaking families, we went into the pockets in Queens, a lot of pockets in Queens, where you'd find, many people for whom this would be very beneficial, and you can do field testing. People surprisingly are really interested in being part of something, provided you approach it in the right way.
And I would suggest schools as another one. It would probably be a safer introduction from a school to a parent, and scalable.
There's a lot of legwork.
I kind of was wondering if there were organizations that I could talk to that could, perhaps
So the Robin Hood Foundation probably does, has some of its grantees. I would have to, if you just even look on their foundation site, they support a number of very impressive small nonprofits that would, I am certain, have someone in this area. So it might be a place to start.
Thank you for your question. Speak right into the microphone too. I think some folks in the back are having a hard time hearing.
Hi, Chris Novell. Many interesting points have been brought up already. I feel the need to go back to the very basics to make sure we understand the scope that we want to address and wherever the answer might come from. Are we talking about a solution only for the United States or one that's global? Are we talking, the amount of money in total is $7 million, but then there was mention of $3 million, and so how many prizes are there? And as far as adult literacy, are we talking about a product or a service that is strictly for 18 years and older, or might it include somehow younger people?
Your moderator is ignorant. I'm going to ask if Christina...
You're asking the wrong
Anthony,
group of people.
Yeah, exactly. Anthony, do you want to come up, or Christina? Does someone... Cynthia?
Yeah. The answer is it is $7 million. The grand prize is $3 million. And if you go to the Adult Literacy XPrize website. It will then break it down. There are subcategories that you can win in. And so, for example, you can win an additional $500,000 for having the best results with English language learners, et cetera. There are also additional prizes that are almost not prizes, but they're, if you're selected, dollars that are paid forward for the second phase of this is where we're going to do a competition to see which cities can download the app the most. So this is a very long 4.5-year program, and if you go on the website, I think it does an excellent job of walking you through the step-by-step.
Liza, is the website going to be the XPrize website or the Barbara Bush?
The XPrize website would be the best one to go to and see the adult.
Are there resources on the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation? Or is everything directed to?
You'll be directed to the XPrize website, but either way, you can go to either and you'll be able to find it. And you had another question. Oh, it is a US-based prize. So we will provide the opportunity if, after, we don't know, of course, there'll be a panel of judges that will analyze all the results, and then the top 5 teams will each receive 1,000 people to test their product on from 3 cities in the United States. We have not selected those 3 cities in the United States. So sadly, New York, I can't tell you if you're a city or not, but you will get those people to test the product on. Yes, and it is for 18 years and older, target population in the United States.
Liza, why don't you come take this chair, and I'm going to go back to the podium because I have one more assignment there, because I think some of the questions are going to be for you. Okay. Next person, you can ask your question while we're shuffling around up here.
Hi, my name is Russ Fugel. I've got several questions, but I'm going to keep it to one. And let's say I've got $1 billion idea. Let's say I've got some passion. Let's say I've got a solution and I want to pursue it. And I want to talk to everybody about it. But as an entrepreneur, if I'm chasing capital, if I'm chasing investors, how much should I share to find a team? How much should I collaborate? How much, when am I giving away the boat and losing control of this? So,
I'll take that one. My favorite saying on that is that if all it takes to steal your idea is to hear about it, it's not a good idea. And this is something I see a lot of first-time entrepreneurs make, is that there's this sense that the idea is precious. And ideas do have power, and I don't want to completely diminish that. But the truth is building a $1 billion business is about years and years of hard work and passion. And frankly, a commitment level that most people you talk to will not have. And most of them that you will talk to will think it's a dumb idea anyway, and will tell you about it. And what you want to do is actually hear all those reasons, incorporate them into your idea, and say thank you very much, and then continue with your passion and your hard work. But if it's literally, if all it's going to take is somebody hearing about it and being like, oh, I'm going to go do that tomorrow. And I mean, you know, frankly, for something like this, you should just be happy that somebody else is going to do all the hard work and take all the risk. But the odds are that's not what's going to happen. And you know, nothing like a little competition to make you work harder.
Sure. I said yes. Sorry, I undermined the audience person. Go ahead. What's your follow-up? Quick. Okay.
Just real quick. So, but I guess the root of my question was how much is a potential investor going to care about how much I've blabbed about it? So I'm not so worried about losing my idea, but I'm worried about an investor saying, hey, you've already put this all over the place, you put it all over the internet, somebody's already, I can make somebody believe in me and my ability to build a business, but when have I shot myself in the foot to try to secure capital?
Do you already have the answer?
Sorry, what?
Have you already thought of the answer? Are you holding on to the winning solution?
I have an idea, yes.
I think that is the wrong thing to worry about. I really do. I really think, like, first of all, frankly, I mean, from seeing just in my space and other spaces, investors love nothing more than investing in a follow-on idea of something that's already happened. They have no fear of copycats. And so but it's just, that's not how it's gonna go, right? And again, like, if literally somebody's already doing it, is that your idea, right? And if nobody's doing it, the odds of somebody from a standing start just like jumping on it because they heard you talk about it, that's just not how it goes. You're much bigger risk of just not doing it or being wrong about something or not listening to the people who tell you how to make your idea better. Those are the things I would worry about.
Okay, we've got time for 2 more questions.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. My question has more to do with, especially your experiences with Voxy, and you mentioned about, a market where maybe there was a solution on the table. We talked about maybe taking something that's already there and then making it bigger. Talking to, somebody who already has a solution. With your market, you saw something, you said, nope, the product's not good enough. We got the yellow boxes, each course in the yellow box costs $199. It's a lot, you're not seeing the results you want. Do you think that there's still space for big time changes in product development here, or is it just, it's all about access? Or do you think that the big problem is the products themselves, or is it just all about access and funding and who do you need to talk to and that kind of thing?
I think it's a great question. I think most of education, more broadly even than literacy or even than English learning, but it's about improving quality and increasing access, decreasing cost, sort of part of that. I think that there's always going to be room for better and better products. I mean, technology is moving pretty fast, but I also don't think the best product wins all the time. I think that I liked Jake's tube channel. What was your analogy? Plumbing or something like that? I can't remember. He had a good analogy for like how complex it is to get everything right. And yeah, I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think there's still space, and I'm actually sitting right next to a linguist up here, so I'm going to start talking more to her. So,
but and actually, I think your question, if I heard it right, is there still room for innovation here? Is that what you said, or big solutions?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was some sides. I feel like there were a couple of sides of the debate. Others were like, you know what? There's great stuff out there. You just need access. Go grab it off the shelf, take it, and run. And on his one, he was talking about, well, we had the yellow boxes, and the yellow boxes were expensive, and it seemed like there were 2 different sides of the debate, and I kind of wanted to.
Right. So first, I do really think that for something like this to be solved, there needs to be some fundamental distribution funding angle to it. But in terms of the core science and the application, so even though we might say, there are products like Read 180 and other things that are showing great efficacy, where you could take an 11-year-old who's at a second grade reading level and move them a year and a half or 2 years, it is still unbelievably hard. This is not like going to a car wash and starting out dirty and coming out clean. So for it to be that hard with kids, well, the brains are still developing, it's got to be even harder, by the time we're talking about adults. So again, I tend to think that there will also be, if this is going to be solved, revolutionary changes in the model, the ecosystem, the funding, the distribution, et cetera. But there's absolutely, I don't think anyone that can say they've cracked the science code.
I would say until you can inject the knowledge into somebody's brain and the cost of that injection is $0, there is room for innovation.
That sounds great. Yeah, I mean, especially, so yeah, I'll talk to my linguist friend and to my psychologist
We've
friend.
got time
Thank you
for
so much.
one more question, and then where's my friend from the public library who just came up here? She's gonna have the last word. So one question, you guys can take as long as you want to answer it, and then our friend from the library has some information about some resources. Okay, you're it. Last question. Make it worthwhile of the whole audience.
I've got a good one. It's applicable to everybody. It's about finding mentors, which is something that I think everyone here struggles with. So I'm Peter. I'm the founder and executive director of Quill.org. We're an open source literacy tool. And we have now over 100,000 students that are using us nationwide. That being said, fundraising has been a big challenge. Building our network has been a big challenge. So what I'm wondering is, how did you guys find your mentors? I'm curious to hear some specific stories about people who have guided you through the process of getting your companies off the ground. Who were they? Were there any specific stories of some critical advice that they gave you? And how did that help impact your future direction? I feel like these stories can be really critical for me and for a lot of other people out here who are trying to find those initial people that believe in them and give them that next step forward.
Yeah, I can take the first. I think there are two types of mentors. One is the sort of person who will pick you up when you feel like, I just don't want to wake up tomorrow. It's too hard. And that, this guy's one of them. No. But those are the real, the real friends who've either been there before, they're in the space, they believe in you, they believe in what you're doing, and they're going to kind of be a little bit of the wind at your back. The other type of mentor, though, for me has been finding the areas that I have deficits in and making sure I surround myself with the absolute brightest people in the world that I can find. And if you have to pay them for us, I pay them with equity, and they'll sit on a board or an informal advisory board, and I use that resource. I mean, we have an agreement. We meet once a month, and I use them. I send them data. I send them reams of data. I'm like, look at this. Tell me what I'm missing. But it's really picking the 3 or 4 things that you feel like are your blind spots or your deficits, is what I'd say. At least worked for me.
There's a great book that helped me with this. It's a little cheesy and like poppy and self-help, but it's called Never Eat Alone. It's been out forever. And I think for better or worse, it helped me understand some of the just basics of networking and people who do it well, what they do, and the people who don't do it well, what they don't do. And I would recommend that as a starting point. Networking is part of getting a mentor, right? It is, you need to be meeting with a lot of people, and you need to be talking to a lot of people. And with your story, you're an entrepreneur, you've done this thing, it's really cool. I think, you should be able to get a foot in the door a lot of places, and then find people that you connect with and trust, and like what they have to say. And that's all you can really say about that.
And maybe I'll add, since at Edge we just assembled 250 mentors. Actually, most of the people on this panel are inclusive of that. I think you have a particular challenge, though, interestingly, as a nonprofit, from what I understood, because I do think that as a for-profit, you have a couple of tools at your disposal: a board of advisors, a board of directors. Usually, board of directors are investors. Board of advisors can get some equity compensation. So, and I certainly sit on the boards of several nonprofits, but the incentives for that are the greater good, I guess. But asking people to put their name on something sometimes helps to get them vested. I don't know if an advisory board would work in your case, but certainly in companies that I've had, I've looked at boards of advisors that are more industry specific. So I had a company that worked with public school districts. I had a board of advisors of former school superintendents. So some is you want to think about whether it's a therapist or someone who's going to help you in a specific area. Like, you can try to build a board of advisors that have specific either contacts or functional expertise. It may not all come from one place or one person.
Anyone else want to?
I wanted to say one last thing, because as a nonprofit ourselves, I would just say there's one word: persistence. Figure out who you want to have be your mentor, and don't give up until they are.
Yeah, I had to stalk this guy for 3 years. I mean, seriously, finding mentors is a very deliberate and long-term play.
Michael, you're the only one that didn't weigh in on mentors. You want to get in the last word here?
A lot of people.
You want to get in the last word, yeah?
I had a professor in graduate school who said to me once, "Mike, I can take any student paper and tell you why it's the best thing, and I could also tell you why it's a piece of crap. And I think he relished the latter a lot more. And having somebody in your life who constantly challenges you and tells you why you're wrong and forces you to confront those things, I think that's a pretty excellent quality. They care enough about you to constantly challenge your thinking. I think that's important.
I think that's a perfect place to leave this. There was someone that had some resources to tell you about, so let's give her the microphone. And then, speaking of networking and finding mentors, there's an opportunity for you all to do just that. But after the library announcement, we have one more piece of business, and just hang on, then the lights will go up and you'll get to do some networking. So just bear with us, we're nearing the end here. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Helena Escalante. I'm here with the Business Library. We're part of the New York Public Library, and thank you very much for the mention. We have a lot of resources at your disposal. There are incredible databases. We can help you find mentors, get with advisors. We have a lot of resources, and I want to invite you all for this to come over and we can help you. Number one. And number two, if I can make a super quick commercial, we are having orientation sessions for our startup business plan competition. So for those of you that are starting and in need of a little capital, which is not that little, the grand prize is $15,000. And within our participants in the past, we've had some folks that have put together educational apps. So it may be a very good contact for you to come as well.
Great, and you'll be around for
I will be
networking?
up there,
Great.
so find me. My name is Helena. Thank you.
Okay, so the audience participation part of the evening is over. I see some of you are very sad. Don't be sad. Stick around for networking. We are going to end the evening with a video from Dr. Peter Diamandis, the chairman and CEO of XPrize.
Peter Diamandis, broadcasting to you from my office here in Los Angeles at XPrize. A pleasure to be there with a group of people who are passionate about reinventing adult education. And again, a tremendous thanks to the Barbara Bush Foundation for their support, and for the Dollar General Literacy Foundation for your support in making this happen. So here's the way I think about this, and why I want to urge everyone in the room here to be thinking about creating a team to compete in this $7 million competition. If we think about it, 1,000 years ago, the only people who could impact a country, a region, a nation, the world, were the kings and the queens. And even the best that they could do was to deploy their troops or change monetary policies. 100 years ago, it was the robber barons, the industrialists, who could build the libraries, the schools, the railroads, the steel mills. And there were just a small handful of those. Today, it's all of us. Anyone who truly cares about changing the world, solving problems, can. There's extraordinary capital available from crowdfunding. There's extraordinary capability available from the crowd itself, the ability for you to create a piece of software that touches the lives of tens of millions of people. And to be clear, you've heard these numbers many times already, with 36 million basically illiterate adults in the United States. That is a sin. And the challenge is that we can't really build enough buildings, teach enough teachers to scale to meet their needs. It's amazing the work that's being done to touch the lives of a couple million illiterate adults today, but with the technology and the capabilities that you have, we can scale. We can make it possible for a person who's embarrassed by their illiteracy to learn in the privacy of their home. And ultimately, it's a democratizing force. I like to say that the poorest child in Manhattan on a smartphone has access to the same knowledge and information that President Clinton had, or actually the same information that Larry Page, the CEO of Alphabet, has. This kind of technology democratizes access. And the direction that we're going, ultimately, is that artificial intelligence and high bandwidth connectivity is going to democratize it, so that the education of the poorest person in the United States and the wealthiest person in the United States is the same. And this Adult Literacy XPrize is the first step in that direction. And so ultimately, by you choosing to form a team, to partner the smartest coders on the planet with the smartest thinkers in literacy on the planet, to form a team and go after this competition, is literally throwing yourself a touchdown pass and changing the future. So I urge you, first and foremost, to form a team. And let me just take a moment to say thank you to the key important thank yous in the audience here. the MIT Enterprise Forum of New York City. I'm a 10-year alum of MIT. Not that I was at MIT 10 years ago. I spent 10 years there and love the institution. Fiverr, for underwriting this event, I've used Fiverr dozens of times, and it's an amazing platform. It's extraordinary. Again, the notion that you can touch the crowd and get capability anywhere on the planet to help you solve your problems. Cooper Union for donating this beautiful space. Obviously, Mrs. Bush for joining the event just before me and sharing her vision, her passion, her foundation's capital. To Liza McFadden, the CEO, and Deneen Tor, the Director of Communications for Dollar General. Again, this would not have happened without you guys. Ultimately, there are three things that make anything happen in the world. The right amount of capital and the right people, that combination allows you to build the technology. And people, technology, and capital can solve problems. The right people and the right technology can attract the capital. That's called venture capital. But technology and money without the right people is useless. And so that's why we're here today, to ask you to form a team, to go for this, to go and solve this problem. Because in solving it, you're going to change the lives of not a couple of million, of tens of millions of people. And what we do here in the United States will then flow to the rest of the world. So form a team, participate. An honor and pleasure for me to be beaming in to share my thoughts, my passion, my humble request with you. Form a team, join us, let's do this thing.
So I want to thank everybody who's been here on the panel and all the speakers, because they did an amazing job educating us on first the problem and what it is that we need to do to rise to the occasion and sign up for a team. In the back we have Sync, and they'll help you find teammates. Fiverr was a great sponsor, but they have a lot of resources available. I had heard somebody ask some questions about finding teammates. Try Fiverr. They have a lot of great resources, a great community. And so I want to encourage you all to step outside and take this time to actually interact a little bit. I don't know how long Liza's going to be here, but I think one of the things that wasn't mentioned is that this is the first XPrize that has something to do with humans. All the rest of them were about engineering technologies. And so this is a very, very special XPrize. And I hope somebody here in the audience wins. Anyway, thank you very much for participating. Once again, thank you to our panelists and sponsors. And Shlomi, thank you very much. Shlomi over here from XPrize can probably answer some questions specific to the prize as well. And thank you. And Nicole, especially thanking Nicole for making this such a great event too.